just really, really quick, and this is the last time I'm going to say, you just have you guys visit. Remember, because I forget all the time myself, when you come back out later, you're going to be heading downhill immediately, and a lot of guys forget that.
Yeah, no,
Okay, go for it. Go for it.
We used to take naps in these things at the freight ramp at night.
Right.
We called it the Tilton Hilton.
Did you have a luxury of one of these? Of a nice cot to lay on?
No. I had a raggedy old sleeping bag. Yeah, it brings back a lot of memories.
Sir, what's your name?
Dave Harris.
Dave Harris.
Yep.
And you're a freight dog.
I was back in the days, back in the 70s. I flew Beech 18s, and then I flew Turbine 18s, Western 3s.
Western Trees.
So, kind of my first non-instructing flying job.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it brings back a lot of memories.
So when you walked up there, we were talking, and you said, "I have nothing interesting about flying a Beech 18s," but then you went in to say you've had experienced 14 engine failures.
That was pretty common in those days. I mean, it was not a big deal. It was just kind of, unless you lost one right after takeoff, then that could became a big deal. But we were shutting down engines on a fairly regular basis, you know. A lot of it was, a lot of the engine parts and stuff were getting old, and you know, a lot of the parts that we're using were new old World War II stock, and we're finding out that they didn't hold up as well as they thought they did, you know.
Right.
So, but they were a neat airplane. I learned a lot from them, and I didn't get killed in one, so that was always a good thing, you know. So,
What would you say was the most important lesson you learned from this particular aircraft?
you know, the Beech 18 taught you to always leave yourself an out, no matter what you did, you know, because I know a friend of mine that flew for another company, but we knew each other back in the freight hauling days. He said, you know, the neat thing about a Beech 18 is, he said, after you'd had some experience in one, the guys were either good or they were dead, you know, because it wasn't overly forgiving of, you know, but it taught me a lot. Like I said, I had a lot of experience flying freighters and stuff in them, and that was back in the days where you couldn't get a flying job, and I had a flying job, so that was pretty cool, you know. And then after that, I went to the airlines, and it always, I felt it was a good background, you know. Plus, the other nice thing is when I went and got checked out in Beech 18s, one of the reasons why I ended up getting checked out of them is I had a lot of tail wheel time. And even back in the mid-70s, it was getting hard to find guys that had tail wheel time. And as you know, this airplane isn't the easiest one to, yeah. So, it was a lot of fun. We didn't have avionics as good as this. Yeah. And a radar. Never flew an 18 with a radar. So, but, yeah, this is pretty cool.
What was, if you don't mind me asking, what was the pay flying an 18, jockeying an 18 those
In the
days?
piston 18s, you're going to laugh. I think we were getting paid $10 an hour with a minimum of $50 a night. Well, we thought that was a pretty good deal, you know. Now, when I flew the turbines, we were salaried. And it seems to me about $18,000 a year was what the salary was. Back in those days, that was
Pretty good.
pretty good money.
And you're building time.
Yep. That was the best thing, you know. I mean, flying a multi-engine turbine airplane, you know. And now the Westerns, of course, are still tail draggers. In fact, when I went to my first airline job, my first flight training session was the first time I'd ever flown a multi-engine airplane with a nose wheel. And I remember later on that my stick partner and I were talking. He says, man, he says, and we were flying Metroliners. He says, man, that thing's a real handful in a crosswind. And I looked at him and I said, you never flown Twin Beach, have you? I thought, this is easy. Look at that, you know. And you can see where you're going, you know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I had good experiences in 18s. So you learned, you know.
So back in those days, did you work for just one company or a multitude of different companies?
Two different companies. I worked for a Beach 18 operator in southeast Wisconsin, which is no longer there. And the company is no longer there. In fact, I don't know if there's anybody even with the company that's still alive now. That was 40 plus years ago, you know. And then I flew turbine 18s for a company out of Milwaukee, and they had really nice airplanes. They were well maintained. They were just, you know, really nice airplanes. And they were kind of one of the premier operators. They only had 2 airplanes, but they were really nice 18s, you know, really nice Westwinds. And I like the Westwinds. It's a little trickier, I thought, on takeoff and landing than even the piston ones were, because you had a lot of lead time with the PT6 engines. You know, basically you flew them on the ground too fast because you didn't want to ever get behind on the power and have to cop the power up because it wasn't going to be available to you. But I thought it was a fun airplane. So,
what type of freight were you guys hauling?
mostly Emory air freight contracts.
Okay.
I did a little bit of airmail flying too, but not much of that. There's mostly contracted with Emory Air Freight, and you fly down to O'Hare and you do a freight sort down there, and then you'd fly someplace else and then come back to O'Hare, and, you know. So those are pretty good times.
Milwaukee to Chicago. I'm sure you ran into quite a bit of weather.
Yeah, saw quite a bit of weather. We used to fly the turbines. We flew into Buffalo, New York every night, and you saw a lot of weather on those routes, you know, because in the winter it was snowing all the time, and then the summer it was thunderstorms all the time. So, and like I said, back in those days, it was very unusual to have weather radar, you know, so you had to pick your way around stuff visually and stuff like that. So, but again, it was a good teacher, you know. So, don't know what else I can tell you about him. Like I said, it was a long time ago, but it's a lot of fun. So kind of neat sitting in an 18 again.
Yeah.
You know?
Bring back some good memories.
Yep. Yep.
Well, sir, here with the Freight Dog Files, we want to thank you for telling us your story.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of cool. You know, well, you know, this was my first. You know, I was a 20-year-old kid, and I was flying captain on a Beech 18. Didn't suck. You know, and that was in the days there were. All the airlines were furloughed. There were no flying jobs to be had, you know, and I was lucky. So, like I said, I think the thing that helped is I was used to flying an airplane with a third wheel on the other end.
All right.
Anyway.
Tail Draggers Unite.